Welcome, I'm D, and today in this video I'm going to talk about renting in Mexico. So you decide, okay, you want to come to Mexico for a long period of stay, or you want to move to Mexico and live to Mexico. So with these tips, this will help you when renting in Mexico. And my first tip is, whenever you're renting in Mexico, come to Mexico first if you come on vacation, or you can come rent an Airbnb for at least about a week. I'll say something like that. Do a short-term renting no more than a month to see the area that you want to rent. And the reason why is you might like the hot beach area and then you come and realize it's too humid for you. Mexico has different temperature. Mexico even have snow, so that's something that you have to know. So that's why that would be my tip when you come to Mexico. Get an Airbnb and get an Airbnb so you can know the area, walk around, and don't just walk around in the daytime, see the place. Make sure you also do it at nighttime too, because there's two different lifestyle, two different type of vibes in Mexico, from daytime and nighttime. Most people work in the daytime in Mexico, and at nighttime, sometimes in the neighborhood, a lot of people are home and you hear a lot of loud music going on, and it goes on till 3, 4 in Mexico. So Mexico is loud, not in a bad way, but that's just how the culture is, how they enjoy themselves. I'm currently outside, so you're gonna hear some nature. All right, so let's get into it further. All right, so if you see something online, say you're looking on Facebook Marketplace for the neighborhood and you see an apartment or house for rent that you want to rent, do not send no deposit, do not send no down payment. You don't do that. You come and you do that in person. That's why I suggested you wait until you come to Mexico first and you're in person. And whenever you're doing a deposit, make sure it's a deposit and you can see the place, and make sure you're writing like a contract with the deposit. I suggest you get information to make sure the person who's trying to rent to the place is the owner or the property manager, because there's a lot of fraud and scam goes on here in Mexico when it comes to renting. Next step, always check to make sure what you want, if you want to furnish or unfurnish. I suggest furnish if you're just coming to live in Mexico, so that way you can get a feel of the lifestyle here, and then after that you can decide, okay, I want this permanently where I live in this area. And then if you want to decide to buy a property or rent a property with your furniture, and it's a lot cheaper whenever you're renting in Mexico and it's unfurnished than when it's furnished. And when it's furnished, you have to check. Sometimes they say semi-furnished, where there's no refrigerator, there is no stove, there's no microwave, things like that. Or you get one bed, the other room there will be no bed, or you get some table and you get a couch and then there's no other furniture. That's what they call semi-renting in Mexico when they say semi-furnished. So that's something that you have to pay attention to, and you've got to make sure ask questions when you go there so you can be clear, and make sure everything that you talk about, you want that to be in the contract. You want that to be in the contract, not just word of mouth, because if it's not written down, then technically it was never discussed, and they can always win that. Okay? Yes. Next step, talking about appliances. That's very important too in Mexico. A lot of times, even when it's furnished, sometimes there's no refrigerator, there's no stove. I don't know why. I guess because it probably costs a lot of money. But if I'm going to rent something, I expect at least a stove and a refrigerator there. Microwave, you don't have to have that, but a stove and a refrigerator should be a part of the renting. So always make sure you pay attention to that. Even though there might be a refrigerator there and a stove there, you just always want to check with that and say, hey, what appliances do I get? What everything do I get? Because you just want to make sure everything be clear and all that be put down in the contract. Okay? And I'll get to the contract in a few, because that will be my next tip. Contracts in Mexico. Contracts in Mexico have to be in Spanish, not English. So if you get a contract and it's only English and they didn't give you a Spanish version, it is not a contract. It is not considered legal in Mexico. You can't go to court with an English contract. Yes, some places might have it in two, where they give it to you in Spanish and then give it to you in English if you don't speak Spanish. And even if they do that, you always want to check. It's easy to do this. Either you can get somebody else to do it for you, or you can just get Google Translate and you just hover it over there with the photo part, scan it, and it translates it for you in English, each part, and you just take your time, no rush. If they said, oh, I need this to be done by the end of the day, then let it go. You don't want to be rushed when you are renting something that you're going to be in for a while, and you got to pay deposit, and then you got to pay rent and somewhere you got to live. So you always want to check that, make sure it's in Spanish, and only Spanish. That's the one that's legal. And then you're going to get that notarized. The notary here in Mexico is legal. They have a lot of power, I would say, when it comes to renting and buying homes. Everything goes to the notary, which you have to pay for. Yes, so notary can go all the way up to like 8,000 pesos. And I'm also seen that in Mérida, Mexico, where it's about 6,000, 7,000 pesos for notary. And I'm like, I'm not paying that much money because you don't get that back to sign that. Like here is like here where I've seen in Cancún, Playa del Carmen, it's a lot cheaper, 3,000, or it's like 1,500. Sometimes the owner will cover it, or they say they split it in half, where it's 1,000 pesos, 1,500 pesos. Sometimes there is no notary. But when there's no notary, they didn't get the contract. It's still valued, but without a notary, it might not hold up in court. So that's something you want to pay attention to. The notary here is very, very important when it comes to legal. It's like notarization with a stamp that say it's official, but it's a little bit more stronger than that here in Mexico because everything goes through the notary here in Mexico. So keep that in mind. Next tip, always check everything when you go inside the house or the apartment that you are renting. All electrical, check all the plumbing, check everything, make sure everything works, and just don't turn it on. Okay, water's coming out, turn it off. No, let it flow a little bit. Tell them, hey, you want to see that it's working. You want to see electricity also. And if you know a little bit about it, sometimes you just want to check the breakers too, and all those type of things. You want to check everything, that make sure everything works. The water heater, because you don't want to get in the apartment and then everything start breaking down on you, or it never worked because you never checked the air condition. Very important, especially if you're in a humid or hot places that's on the coast. You want to check those, and you want to turn it on as soon as you get in there. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to turn on the air condition, and let's say, hey, I need this to run for 5 minutes because I want to check, because sometimes the electricals are not the best where they have 3 air conditioners on one breaker, and that's too much because in Mexico it's not central air. You rarely will find that because the houses are built with concrete. So each room or each area will have their own air conditioning unit. So you want to turn each one on, make sure it's working, make sure it gets cold, because sometimes, and depends on what time of the year you go, you might feel cold when it's not really working. So you want to make sure you just check, make sure everything works, make sure that's in the contract also, that hey, who's responsible for if the air conditioner breaks down, if the stove breaks down, if the refrigerator breaks down, if the washing machine or dryer, if it comes with it, breaks down. So these are stuff that you want to check thoroughly, because the court system here is in the favor of the owner when it comes to that, when you want to go to court, and it takes a delay, and it's a lot slower here in Mexico. When you go rent and the house or the apartment is not taken care of, I suggest don't rent from it, because if they're trying to rent it to you that way, they don't care. They just want to get it out, rent, and whenever you have a problem, yes, you probably going to be the one to have to fix it. The owner is going to ignore you. It's going to be a runaround, and if they do fix it, it might be a while. And then on top of that, they might get somebody they know, a friend or somebody don't have a license, which a lot of people don't have a license when they're doing their work here in Mexico. And they just go there and patch it up, and then you're going to go into the same problem again 30 days later, 60 days later, and sometimes it's just not worth it. So that pay attention to. And you want to look at the place. If it's an older place with fresh paint, I'm not saying it's bad because they're trying, but also, you'd have to get that smelling to see if there's something behind it that they're covering up, like mold and stuff like that. Because sometimes that's what it is. Oh, I'm just going to paint this up and get rid of it and move on. And then later now, you live in there, and then a leak is there somewhere, and that's what they cover up, where the mold stain is coming from. So those are stuff that you just want to check everything thoroughly. Electricity, and I talked about that a little bit earlier, but this is a little bit different. So you want to check the area. So after you done do everything, you want to ask people or a neighbor that lives there, what is it like living here with electricity? Does it goes off a lot? Does it not? Because some part of Mexico, yes, they have power problems. And if you work remotely or you stream game or things like that, that you need the internet to be reliable, the electricity to be reliable, you want to check that and ask around and make sure that, it's where you want to live, where electricity is not really a problem, because some area do have a problem and you don't want to have to be working in every day. You're having a problem with your city and you work remote, and then you're trying to reach to your boss and say, oh, this is what's going on. It's going to be kind of hard to explain every minute, because then you're going to lose electricity, and also you're going to lose your Wi-Fi internet probably when that happens. Sometimes not, unless you have like, what is it called? The one that Elon must have, that internet that comes from the satellite. With that, then you probably still can keep working until electricity comes back, and you can get one of those little small generator things to keep charging up your computer in that meantime. So that's just something to check out. Okay, is that here it's not every month in Mexico, it's every 2 months you get your electrical bill here in Mexico. So that's another thing. When you rent, you want to make sure you check, ask the owner, hey, can I see the last 2 electrical bill, because you want to see what it's like here, and how much that person was paying before. And if it's a certain amount that's too high, you get them put in a different category that's a lot more expensive, and it takes a while. It takes about 4 to 6 months to get back down if you don't use the electricity. So that's something you gotta ask about. It's every 2 months. Yes, every 2 months electricity bill come. You can pay it online, and you can, when you get the app, you see it and it doesn't show up, it will say 0 if you pay it until the next bill. But you can go back to the history, or they have the physical copy, and then you can pay it at the CFE. That's the only electric company here in Mexico, CFE. So they got all the power. So that's why you want to check that and make sure they're not using, I think it's like 800 megawatts or something like that, gigawatts, something like that. If you go over that per month, I think you get put in a different category and stuff like that. So you just want to pay attention to that. And the bill, the most expensive one I've seen someone pay is 10,000 pesos in 2 months. That's about what, $525, give or take. It depends on how the dollar moves. So that's something to pay attention. But for it to get to that high, you have to have like 3 of the air conditioner on, and just don't turn it off for the 30 days or 60 days for it to be that much expensive. How I do it is, when I'm hot, I turn it on for like an hour or 2, turn it off. When it gets hot again, turn it back on. And in the meantime, when I turn it off, I have the fan on to keep it longer circulating, get blackout curtains, and that also helps. That's just my recommendation. That's what I use, and I keep my bill down. The highest bill I've paid so far is 1,000 pesos for 2 months. Yes, it's been working for me. And the AC. The AC unit in Mexico, sometimes it's going to be in a contract that's for you to clean every 6 months. So after you rent it, 6 months later, you are required to clean it. So pay attention that in the contract, that's on you. And if you didn't clean it in that time, the owner can forfeit your deposit back, or take that out of your deposit for them to get someone to clean it, and for whatever amount they want to get that person to clean it for too, because in the contract it will say if you violate any of these things, you can forfeit your deposit. So you got to pay attention to that part of it. So you are sometimes responsible for cleaning the air conditioner about every 6 months. And I think that's because of like the humidity and the air conditioner. It's inside, and it just for it to get clean and run efficiency, so it doesn't get breakdown and things like that. So that's something to check about whenever you're renting in Mexico, and check inside your contract if you are responsible for cleaning it every 6 months, or the owner will be cleaning the air conditioner every 6 months. And last but not least, deposit. Sometimes it's a problem to get your deposit back here in Mexico whenever you're renting. It's a problem to get your deposit back, and I've seen a lot of people, I guess they've been here for a while and they know the system works, and sometimes they just stay the extra month or stay like 15 days or so into that month before they leave. And the reason why they do that is because it's a lot of problem. At least over 50% of people have that problem getting their deposit back. A lot of times, or what the owner do, they find a lot of problem things to get that money, as less of it to return back to you. So that's something you got to pay attention to. So for example, in Mérida, I wanted to rent there in Mérida, and it was 2 deposit they want there and rent. I'm not doing that, but a lot of people having the problem of getting their deposit back. You don't want to deal with that. You're going to pay 2 deposit, then you're going to pay the the notary about 4,000 pesos, 3,000 pesos, depends on the contract. And that's a lot of money you don't want to lose, and depends on how much you rent. So say it's 15,000 pesos, that's about what, $800, give or take, that you're going to pay and then you got to put down two more $800. That's, that's a lot of money. Plus you got to pay for the notary, and I don't know if that would change or not, but that's something to just pay attention with here in Mexico when it comes to getting a deposit back. And if you want to go to court, I think probably it's going to cost you more, and it's going to be like dragged out for you to get that back and things like that. I don't want to just write off everything. Oh, this wasn't here, this wasn't that. So that's, make sure you take a video of everything, videotape everything, what it was like when you get it, and go back and make sure you get a copy of the owner's driver's license or identification, passport if you can. All that's why it's good to do a notary where it's legal. And if you want to go to court for it and you do it yourself without getting a lawyer, if you speak Spanish, then in that way you can go ahead and do it. And sometimes it takes up to 2 months to get it back because they have to wait for that last electrical bill to come to make sure it's not over what you have for you to give it back. And then the electrical bill is about 10,000 pesos, 15,000 pesos or so. So a lot of times they wait for that to come before they give you back deposit, because a lot of people have it high, the electrical bill, and then when they give the deposit back, they have to deal with that after. So that's what it's like here renting in Mexico. If this video was helpful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.